imagine if you said, I don't really know if I should show up in Google. Do you how many e-commerce businesses succeeded with that approach?
Today we have Jeremy Goldman, VP Editorial and Insights at RETHINK Retail. Jeremy, welcome. How are you today?
I am so excited to be with you. Great to start my week with you.
Always great to interview a fellow colleague of the RETHINK Retail amazing community. We're both part of this community. Obviously, you take an active role in RETHINK Retail. Tell us more about the community for the listeners and viewers who are not familiar with it.
Yeah, I forgive you if you're living under a rock, guys, and you don't know RETHINK Retail yet. That's fine. But it's a set of communities, a number of different ones that we run that help out and support whether it's retailers or trusted third-party retail experts, leaders in AI, and soon media and retail and logistics and retail. We're launching all these different new communities. And part of it is that we want to provide intelligence for the communities and a place for them to exchange notes and ideas. And we provide meetups. So we have our own virtual events. We have in-person events like at Toronto Tech Week coming up. We've got a lot of different meetups at major conferences in the industry. And so you can say we stay a little busy, but it's fun work.
Yeah, it's such a great community. I reach out to the community quite often, seek help with the brands that we work with, and it's always great to see, the level of expertise and the positive attitude of all the people involved, and really doing a really great job out there. So, Jeremy, you're like ex-founder, ex-analyst, and eMarketer, now operator, leading innovation and editorial and insights inside the RETHINK Retail. It's actually a media business, right? So, what's the common thread? You've done so much.
Oh my gosh. What the funny thing is that I think afterwards you kind of say, oh, here's the common thread. You figure it out afterwards. But the truth of the matter is I was building very early e-commerce sites around the year 2000. So I've been around this space. I kind of was commerce first and then started to get to be a little bit better at marketing. I realized people weren't connecting social media down to business objectives. So they were really kind of saying, let's just do social for social's sake. And I fell into being an author, which then fell into helping me start an agency just to educate people around the things that I knew. And then I realized the best way to really affect change, I thought, is to actually analyze the space and go around and speak and talk and educate. My joke whenever I would get on stage is, well, I now I'm an analyst, which means I just get to criticize whatever all of you are doing instead of having to execute. And so I think it's been a nice mix, but really in a lot of ways, the great thing about RETHINK Retail is that we are, I'm responsible for helping the company execute and market, but also in charge of editorial strategy. So that's kind of having my cake and eating it too, as they say.
Yeah. So you've built and sold Firebrand Group, right? Obviously, that transition from a founder who actually, launch a company and scale it and exit it to do this transition to the editorial side. Why? Why you took that decision? What was exciting for you at that time?
Listen, the great thing about going into editorial is I'm awash with money. I just sit around. No, I like to make a joke about like if you want to get into editorial, you're doing it for the love of it and not for the glory. But yeah, it's I think I kind of figured out that I'm more of a collaborator and I enjoy collaborating with other people. And it's a little bit lonely being a founder, because there's so many different things you have to do and hard decisions you have to make. And if you want to bounce ideas off of other people, there's sometimes a little bit of like a layer between you and all these other people. And, we actually, so at RETHINK, there is a new CEO just started in December, Marie, who I've known for years and is a fantastic leader. So I think to find strong people to collaborate with, I think is one of the secrets to, any business, even if it's not a commerce business, it doesn't really matter. It's like that is one of the key things that's going to help you grow.
Yeah. And obviously, it's a really exciting industry. It's so dynamic that it's changing, and you just within Rethink Retail, you just you're just fully updated on really what's happening and the latest trends, and the data sources and all the innovation in place. So it's just an ecosystem of retailers, brands, technology companies, agency, consultants. I mean, it's such a vibrant kind of, and the process that also these communities are being managed. I think it's really, really effective and to the benefits of all the communities, all the members involved. So from your editorial perspectives, now we rethink retail, what's the most overhyped story in e-commerce these days?
I think the overhyped thing, it's interesting because it's actually really important, but it's still overhyped. And that's agentic commerce. And I say that, even though Rethink is putting out coverage of agentic commerce right now, but I think part of the problem is that there are a lot of people who are trying to get clicks. It's become like a little bit sensational just to talk about, well, where is this going and how fast is it going? And two things can be true. Thing number one, which is that LLMs and AI search are changing the way people do discovery and research products. Okay, that's something I have a lot of good data points. I can follow up with anybody and shoot them a note over LinkedIn, like a whole lot of bullet points that'll prove that, right? But the truth of the matter is that there are a lot of people who are talking about this as if you're going to have an agent within 2 years that's going to make like all of your buying decisions irrespective of category. And I think that that's where we really talk about like the overhype. That is not the reality that we're going to be living in.
Yes, but the agentic commerce, it has it's really broad because there are so many different categories inside, right? You have like all the bots that try to upsell and try to help you buy things. You have agents that are actually trying to buy for you, right? Through a prompt. And, the Shopify like ChatGPT integrated Shopify, and obviously with Rome lately. So there's a lot of discussion definitely around agentic commerce, but where do you see, like in real, practical implementation? What are the real implementation that you see with agentic AI that is working today, maybe on the retail side and also on the brand side?
Yeah, I think it's a good question because when you think about it, you really outlined that there's so many different things we're talking about simultaneously. And one of the top things that I'm thinking about is just the fact that you have the ability to do some kind of like extra enhanced discovery on your site, particularly if you hold multiple brands and if you have a larger catalog. Amazon, they recently announced that they were going away from that brand name Rufus to just say Alexa for shopping. And that is a pretty interesting thing when you have a high consideration category where you have a lot of different SKUs, and if you're Amazon, and you can change the way that somebody buys, where they previously had to go into a store to have essentially a consultative experience. But if an AI can answer a relatively, and I've tested it to say, like, I need to find this, but it can't be this, and it can't be above this price point, like all these different things, you can make it a lot easier for people to buy certain high consideration items. And if your conversion rate on those types of SKUs, which are often more expensive, tends to go up over time because you invested in the experience of the average person on your site, I think that that's a very compelling use case.
Yes. I mean, AI definitely helps with a lot of processes, just figuring out. We also have the insight and analytics hat, right? So, I mean, the problem of most marketers today is just this overflow of data. I mean, every SaaS or every platform just gathering so much data, right? And the real question is, okay, what do we do? I mean, how do we figure out what's going on? And AI is definitely an area where you can figure out, the most important KPIs of everything that you probably want to do, and trying to figure out, acquisition channels, and trying to understand who are your strongest customers, right? And try to focus on them with more customized journeys. And also, definitely AI has a lot of implementation, right? And yeah, and the latest data also shows that most of AI projects are failing, right? So like if you go to LinkedIn, I don't know how is your feed, but my feed is all like orange, right? With Claude, script and prompts, and just type Claude and we'll send you this and this. It's just all over the place. It's really, I mean, it's so hype, and I wrote a post about that. It's really like Claude, like all over the place, right? I mean, it's just people are sharing skills and try to figure out, what to do. And again, this is overflow of data, right? Overflow of
Well,
information. So, yeah.
but I think you're right. Like you and I, we basically, I think, probably inhabit like a little bit of a nerdier circle than some people. No offense to us. We're good looking at least. But I think that part of the problem is that there are so many different, like LLMs that people can do some searching on, whether or not it's Perplexity, which I know is a lot more niche. Claude obviously is having a major moment right now. And of course, people talk about ChatGPT nonstop. But the truth of the matter is that Google controls so much of the market. And I think that they were late to this in a lot of ways, and that they've caught up pretty significantly. They've done a lot of really impressive things. So now if you think about, this is why you pay billions of dollars to a company like Apple to own the interface. If you think about how many people just start, like they just go to their browser on mobile and they ask a question, and that phone is always with them, and it defaults now to an AI mode answer. So I wouldn't really count Google out, even though it's just not in vogue to talk about Google, because we've just gotten so used to them. It's always cool to talk about the sexy new company. But the reality is that a search has definitely changed. So people are using so many different channels simultaneously. But also just, I really expect a lot more people to ask questions of Google, and for Google to make better sense of that data, and for its advertising engines to become more sophisticated and better, because they're great at making sense of data that might be overwhelming to the average company.
Yes. Look, I mean, there's definitely a big change in terms of links redirecting from Google to brands or to those websites. That's definitely a fact, right? So obviously people are less clicking to be redirected to a website. AI overviews are taking the majority of the answers. So that's a major. And I talked to some brands where their organic reach just dropped like 70%, 80%. That's like a really, really major issues for a lot of companies, and they try to figure out now how to understand geo, right, or AEO, which is another form of agentic commerce, right, which is more query based rather than keywords. But the foundation is SEO, and it's always be like a good article, but maybe developed a little bit different just to cater, questions that are being asked, on the chat platform and LLMs, right?
Absolutely. And I think you raise a really interesting and important point, which is the structure of your data going forward. It was always important, by the way, but I think it becomes even more important, and this was an interesting thing where I just tried to query a whole bunch of resumes that were sent to me, and somebody actually had a weirdly structured resume. Okay. And because of that, that was the one question that I asked of all these different resumes. I was doing this as a test, and the one that was structured the worst was the one that created a quote unquote AI hallucination. So you have to be thinking, do you have the right schema? Do you have the right structure for your data? Are you putting as much data and exposing as much possible to the LLMs? Because I think that there was a time where people were like, should I even show up in these places? And it's just really funny. Like, imagine if you said, I don't really know if I should show up in Google. Do you how many e-commerce businesses succeeded with that approach? So why would you? I mean, I understand the fact that then they're exposing your data, but guess what? Google has always been making a snapshot and essentially cloning your data and querying a clone of things that it found on the internet. It basically did that for speed, but it was always doing it. So the game hasn't changed as much as a lot of people make it out to be.
Yes. I mean, it seems that, you have all these communities, right? You have the Meta community, YouTube, right? The TikTok now is very, very powerful in terms of TikTok Shop and growth of social commerce. Like for any marketeer, just looking at things and just over the years, it's getting more complex in terms of the ecosystem that we need to operate. And each one of those communities or platforms, that they require specific expertise, right? And so the whole job description maybe of the CMO or the marketeer is definitely changing, right? The ability to work and in a kind of a flexible and agile environment where like every week there is something new, and obviously the use of AI. And do you see this as one of the pain points for marketeer out there? I mean, what's the major struggles that you hear that are facing those leaders out there?
Yeah, I think that one of the top things that I see people struggle with, and it can definitely happen at the larger size, but there are a lot of companies where they're oriented in one direction or the other, where they're basically, and what I mean by that is you can have a company that's optimized for commerce, and you can have a company that's optimized for marketing, and often it's interesting, if you, the listener, if you're thinking about this, okay, and if you're a founder, if you're the leader of a company, what is your background primarily? If you think to that, generally that's how the company is oriented. And I think it's an important thing to acknowledge. It's rare to have a company that is really, really good at both. And even if they're really good at both, you tend to be better at one than the other. So I really think it is a little bit of like having the right kind of balance and knowing what kind of company you are, and leaning in that direction, and then addressing whatever basically holes you have in your strategy. Because again, I've seen so many companies, they're really fantastic at building a really strong optimized UI on their site, but then the funnel offsite to get them there is just not as strong. I've seen people who are really, really great at getting people to the site, and then they don't run enough A/B tests, and they don't do optimization of the funnel on the site to get people through checkout. And they drop the ball when it comes to a few easy things like adding more checkout options, or the ability to do drop shipping, and a nice integration that can improve fulfillment speed, the ability to do cross-border commerce. So there are all these different things that I think essentially knowing where you're at as a company, it will help you mitigate the risks, the weaknesses that you have.
Yes. I mean, and you look at like Meta, for example, in the latest quarterly report. I mean, they just broke any profit and revenue data that they ever had, right? I mean, it means that we know that Meta advertising engine moved almost totally to AI, right? And it means that the AI is doing a very, very good job, targeting people, and the KPIs and the return on ad spend and CPCs are very, very good, right, in the AI era for Meta. On the other side, from the brand and the retailer's perspective, cost of acquisition and acquiring new customers, I mean, it's just very, very high. So there is, I mean, the strong, like the Googles, the Metas of the world, right, they're getting stronger and stronger. And Amazon, you mentioned Rufus, rest in peace, and welcome Alexa for shopping, right? I wonder if there's going to be Alexa for other things as well. But the idea is that it's getting more expensive to do marketing, right? And it's one needs to first analyze the data in a very, very good way, and obviously taking a very small decision around where to put extra marketing budgets and efforts. What are you excited about in terms of overall marketing in the US market right now, in terms of channels or new technologies or new trends or whatever you can?
Oh my gosh! So I'll tell you actually, and it's funny because we started out talking about this at the very beginning. One of the trends that I'm following, we're partnering with a conference, and as we typically do, and I actually used AI to analyze all the different topics and threads that are being produced there. And there are a lot of this is of course a retail and e-commerce focused show. And one of the things that was really interesting is there are a lot of different sessions that I saw that are going to be focused on community and basically not just marketing to Gen Z and younger consumers, but the fact that people are seeking out community online. And I think what's true is that there's a lot of fear of AI right now, but I think the trend of leaning into who you are as a brand, from a humanity perspective, That's something that is very true. That's very authentic. A lot of people are trying to do that as brands right now. And a lot of people, like everyday consumers, are looking online and off to build community, to have authentic connections. I actually think that that's going to be a major unlock, if you will, for brands, is that if you can start to create a community around your brand, like we're almost a bad example because Rethink Retail is a community brand, but it's not really a commerce brand. We're not selling, T-shirts and merchandise, even though maybe we should. Let me know afterwards if you think we should. But for a lot of commerce brands, if you can build a sense of community around what you're doing, then that to me is, I think, the key thing. Look at one of the best marketers in the world is Taylor Swift. And what has she done is she's built a community around her music. So people identify with one another as to whether or not, are you a fellow Swiftie, And I think that that's one of the key things that in the age of AI, we're going to seek out more and more human connections, and we're going to seek out more community.
Yes, fully agree. And I also speak about the 3 C's, right? Content, create communities, community, create commerce, right? So that's kind of a loop. Specifically around content, and obviously shoppable video is catching up like big time with TikTok Shop, and also like Meta announced that affiliates can claim, they're commissioned through a link in Reels, right, which wasn't available. It only was available on Stories. What are your thoughts on shoppable video, on TikTok Shop in general, social commerce maybe? Why this is catching up so strong right now?
It makes sense that it's catching up, in the States in particular, simply because this succeeded elsewhere, and the barriers bit by bit came down. So even though a lot of people are still shopping through quote unquote like conventional means, after you get exposed to something, for a few years now, TikTok Shop now is about 2.5 years old now, I think, and something gets to be just like woven into the fabric, and you say, what the heck not? Why not? Because I know enough people who've tried it already, so why don't I try it as well? And if you even think about, you talk about shoppable video, if I'm watching a lot of the NBA playoffs recently, and Prime just made it a lot easier, Prime Video, to just send me a link to something if I want to purchase it. So, and I think the key thing is here with all of this is that we get used to the technology, but every single company, once they've had a little bit of success, they say, great, this can be a cash cow for us. How do we improve the CX? How do we improve the customer experience and remove the friction points so that it's going to be bigger than it was before? That's something that is to me like another major unlock, is that anything that you're doing as a company, once you see some progress, look to see the friction points and see how you can make it bigger, because the friction is often the thing that's stopping it from exploding.
Yes. I want to talk to you a little bit about the overall market in terms of the M&A transactions. And a few years ago, we saw these so many transaction of agencies, specifically Amazon agencies and others, just get acquired in really impressive multiples, right, on the beta, maybe 8 times, 10 times the beta, even more. But those days are over, right? Things have changed a lot. And everything we've discussed about agentic commerce and the changes, right, in marketing and retail and overall, what are your thoughts around the traditional agency model? Do you see it's still viable? It requires maybe some kind of a transformation?
Yeah, I think that it's a really good point. I think that essentially there is a lot. We're very much like in this moment where, and I don't know if this is going to completely answer the question, but we're at this moment where a lot of things are changing at the same time, and what I would almost argue is that I've seen this happen with a lot of other hype cycles, is that people will lean away they'll kind of say, oh my gosh, there's so much uncertainty, I have to figure out all this new stuff. And I think that people often forget about the things that we're working a little bit too soon, like the fundamentals. And you cannot, in a time like this, stop paying attention to the fundamentals. It's one point that I really want to make. I think that there are a lot of businesses, and I love looking at I have a podcast called Future Proof. So obviously I care a lot about thinking about what's next. And I've just noticed that sometimes it gets so incredibly exciting to think about what's next, that thinking about your CX, like we were talking about, thinking about your email marketing, and offering another shipping method that you didn't offer before, taking Bitcoin as a payment method, or another type of digital currency. These are things that you can do to essentially optimize around the edges, which allow you to invest a bit more in the future. And I think that that's something that, again, I know it may be taking your question in a different direction, but I mean, I just advocate for everybody to just think about the fundamentals, and you have a chance to really take market share away from everybody else when they forget about the fundamentals and you lean into them again.
Yeah, that's very interesting. I mean, initially we talked about overhyped stories, right, with agentic commerce and agents, but going back to basic is probably the underhyped example, right, of really what's happening. So just looking at the fundamentals, make sure you have a good and solid and growing email list, retention strategies, right, making sure that all the different pieces are really in the right place, and and just to figure out, through the data where you need to improve. Some of the thoughts are just to zero in and focus, right, on your most profitable SKUs. Other companies feel that maybe they need to go the other way around, expanding the catalog, right, and try to figure out, how to grow through expansion of a variety of SKUs. But yeah, I mean, there are a lot of examples, what needs to be done, and obviously each brand has its own story. It's better not to just copy what others are doing, right? I interview brands like in the same niche with the same product, serving different customers, but each one of them is just growing differently, different supply chains, using different sales channels for growth. Market sentiment is different, things that are consumers are thinking about them is they're just completely different, and they are like on the same niche. So definitely every brand, every retail has its own story and the way to to deliver that story to the world, and just trying to craft a strategy around that.
And you mentioned the world. I mean, obviously, people can hear from our accents. We're calling in from two different places.
Yeah.
And, you think about this, it's every single market. I've had past experience at, big CPGs like L'Oreal and Unilever, and helped basically do global commerce initiatives. You have to understand, it's a very good point about which market you're in. You can't just listen, by all means, get other ideas from other markets, but each one's different in terms of their readiness to transact online, from their mobile adoption, like if you're optimizing for an Apple device, but everybody in the market is using Android, probably a bad idea. There are cultural sensitivities when you're adapting certain brands and adapting language. I took the Kiehl's website in the US and helped translate it into German, and the words were too long, so it created layout issues. So to understand different sensitivities about the markets that you're operating in, I think is paramount, and to loop in the right partners in a moment like that is also critical. Know what you don't know.
Yeah. Jeremy, I want to talk to you about Omnichannel. I mean, companies can grow through retail and then move to D2C, or vice versa, start on D2C and then go to retail. When do you think there is a tipping point when they need to add another offline or online channel, and vice versa? What are the thought process in terms of growth, to other offline or online channels?
There's no right or wrong way to do this, but I've definitely seen so many people do it in a lot of different ways, where I'll always advocate for people to say, listen, try to build a brand in a high margin channel, try to provide a great experience. I advocated for people to do this instead of just saying, we'll just launch it on Amazon and see what happens. Part of it is that if you want to go into retail, and if you want to find the right kind of customers in retail, well, don't you want to have that conversation with the retailer when you're operating from a position of strength, when you know a lot about your customer and you're able to show, here's what I can bring to you, the retailer. I don't want to say retailers are evil. They're not, but they are thinking about what are you going to be able to do for them. And that means, they want data on a new customer that you can bring into the store where you're really strong. So knowing who you are when you have that conversation with the retailer, I would say that's generally the way to go. I've obviously, and I think we've all seen people do it the other way, but it's really going to be dependent on what category you're in, how much capital you have to spend. Right? I mean, it's obviously easier to just build in somebody else's channels, but the nice thing about the world that we're in now is there are partners like I remember I'm old enough to say like, yeah, I built e-commerce sites. I built e-commerce interfaces with some very early companies. And that was something we did because it didn't exist, like you couldn't just enlist Shopify. So we're in a different world now.
Sure. Jeremy, what's important for you in terms of your life, your role in Rethink Retail for this, starting soon, the second half of 2026?
Literally the most important thing for me is to help the retail community kick ass. Hopefully I can say that, kick butt a lot more than the year before. Like I want everybody to be successful and to have a thriving community. And a lot of that is going to involve, doing some essentially novel research to support different industries. We're doing a lot around grocery right now, a lot around Omnichannel that's going to come out over the next few months. I want literally everybody who's listening to this now to write me, please, and let me know what is on top of mind for you, because my goal is to provide as actionable intel for people as possible. So if you don't tell me what problems you're having, then I can't be of better service to you. So that's literally all I want to do. Maybe I'll walk the dogs when I have a free moment, but other than that, this is why I'm here.
Perfect. So how people can reach out to you?
I mean, find me on LinkedIn. It's there are a lot of Jeremy Goldmans, but Jeremy Goldman, Rethink Retail. I'm confident people are going to be able to find me. Shoot me a note, and any questions you have, always happy to answer.
Sounds great, Jeremy. Anything else you want to add?
This was fantastic. I love this conversation. You're a terrific interviewer. That's all.
Thank you so much. It was a pleasure. Great value, and thank you so much. Have a great day. Thank you, Jeremy.
Too.
Bye-bye.
Cheers.